first encounter came in 1966. I was walking down the street near Tompkins Square Park, and I happened to live 2 blocks away. And I didn't realize, but other devotees were in that area at that time. But it was before anything that was happening, and Prabhupada walked down the street. And so he was by himself, and there was nobody with him. So that meant it was way before this whole thing started. And so I was like, walking through the park every day. Then I got a job uptown on Madison Avenue, where I was an illustrator for an advertising agency doing Duncan Hines, Procter & Gamble stuff, and I got into the commercial art line. But I graduated from one of the toughest art schools in America, in Los Angeles, Art Center School. And there I majored in book illustration. Now, had I stopped and talked to Prabhupada at that time, I would have been in the beginning, but I missed it. So I got the job and I got into a fellowship and I went to Italy. So all that is background. And I joined in Miami, my wife, and we came to the temple, and it was a flip of a coin. Was it going to be the TM guys or the Haris? And so it came to be the Haris, and Narhari was the guy to answer the phone. He says, yeah, we just had a big, huge feast here, a Sunday feast. We'll save a plate for you. And so ultimately, the prasad was knocked out, absolutely amazing. It was the mangoes and every kind of preparation. Then I started doing some paintings. There was a banyan tree there, and I did a banyan tree painting with Radha Krishna under the tree. That got taken to Los Angeles, and Prabhupada heard that an artist had joined by Avirama telling the story. So I got swapped for a Jadharani painting. Avirama got the Jadharani painting, and I got to be in LA and working on the books. And so the first morning, Prabhupada came out for darshan, and he looked at me and he said, well, finally you've come. It wasn't a verbal thing, but it was coming into my head, like, directly. Bhardaraj told me, I want you to make the first Prabhupada Murti. And so I said, well, I'm a brand new devotee. He said, well, that's okay, you're qualified, you can do it. I said, well, okay, if you say so. He said, we talked to Lochan and get his opinion about how to take pictures of Prabhupada. So I thought, well, I'll do that. And then I started making drawings of Prabhupada. And so Prabhupada's giving a class, and he's looking out across, and I got a profile view from his right side. And so I'm looking at Prabhupada and making a drawing. Now, I'm an old-time portrait artist, so I can do a portrait in a matter of a few minutes. But every time I looked up at Prabhupada, his face had changed. It was like a kaleidoscope. First, like the shape, the color, it was different people sitting there. He did a whole amazing thing just in front of my eyes. I don't know whoever saw it, but actually it was an amazing experience. And then I just gave up. I couldn't do it because it kept changing all the time. Second day I tried again, it was worse. I just closed my eyes, I just gave it up, and Prabhupada looked over at me, a smile. You can't capture the spiritual master that easy. Because we were full of questions, because ultimately the painters were the first ones given all the questions. And then, as making dioramas, we had to know also. And so we asked Prabhupada, what about Lord Brahma? And he says, should we give him a beard? He says, yes, give him that. He's an elderly person, so let him have a beard. What about tilak? Yes, tilak, no problem. And what about the color of Mother Yasoda? Some people say she was the color of Krishna. And Prabhupada, there's a quote there that Prabhupada, who started this? She's not the same color as Krishna. She has her own color. She's tan color. She's normal color. And so a lot of these things that may be misrepresented because people don't have the exact knowledge that came from Prabhupada. So we do have all that knowledge that Prabhupada delivered to us, in different ways of what different saints look like, and etc. Prabhupada spent quite a bit of time in that doll studio, and then the next thing he went to a Murti that Lochan finally finished of Prabhupada, and it was done as an earlier version of Prabhupada, Radha Damodar. And so he had a silicone rubber head, and Prabhupada's looking down at the time when Prabhupada came to see it. And so there was a wooden rod inside. When he hit the motor, the head went up. And Prabhupada just smiled and just beamed, and it's just like, just like, there's a picture about that. Somebody took a picture of Prabhupada at that moment. It's beautiful. So his recognizing the work that devotees were doing, he was so happy to see all of us working. He said, I'm so happy that you're doing it. And it doesn't matter, he said, it doesn't matter what the handwriting is like, as long as you're writing, talking about the painting and the sculpture. Experience with Prabhupada, and it culminated mainly in Vrindavan, because it was always hard to get near Prabhupada in the beginning. Let me say one morning walk. All the Fate guys were on a morning walk, and Prabhupada was walking really fast. And as we were approaching Prabhupada, I saw that he wasn't touching the ground. He was gliding, he was going really fast. It was Venice Beach on the top in the park area. So he was just touching the ground, just going along, moving very fast. Everybody behind him was half running to catch up with Prabhupada. Now Prabhupada's in this advanced age, but all these young guys, they couldn't keep up with him. And so I got closer to him and we joined the party. And then Rameshwari asked always wonderful questions all the time. So Prabhupada said one thing about the seer is the same in a waking and sleeping state. Now, for me, that didn't make any sense at that time. But everything Prabhupada said was mysterious. There's a moment when Tamal Krishna was telling Prabhupada, he said that you mentioned in Bombay that the diorama making would make your mission successful around the world. Is that true? Yes, of course. He says, because he says, well, we have the changing body in the window at Fate in LA, and people are always stopping and asking questions. They want to know the story behind it. And so it's change of body means from birth to death in one shot. And so people are curious about that. They want to know about, what happens between the 2 points. And so he said, well, give them Bhagavad-gita, that explains it. And so, but the whole reason for dioramas is that you can explain everything without a word. And so that's what my Guru Maharaj wanted. He wanted dioramas to glorify Krishna and Lord Chaitanya and to be preaching like that as an art form. So he wasn't opposed to any kind of art form, that's for sure. I mean, the paintings and the sculpture, everything embellished and gave more impetus to his preaching. And so the change of body was a very important preaching tool, because ultimately, and that's what the diorama art is all about, is to give everything in a single glance, the whole message, very strong. And so, but then supplemented by the literature, by Bhagavad-gita, that's what he wanted. So he was very strong about that, and he wanted it to happen, but it's not easy. I mean, Prabhupada wanted to, catch the rhinoceros, but it wasn't all that easy to do. So we tried our best, and we did what we could in that time frame. So it happened at that time when Prabhupada came to the Dal studio that many things took place at that time. And one of the major deals was when Prabhupada was asking about the angels on the sky. Clamped to the walls of the upper level of the Dal studio were all these Gandharvas. And then the Gandharvas, Prabhupada said, they don't have wings. And ultimately, then it went on to this change in body display that I had the fortune of making a small one. And so I did the small diorama, and Bhardaraj was presenting this small diorama to Prabhupada. And so Prabhupada looked at it and he said, Srila Prabhupada, would you like this for your room? And Prabhupada looked at it and shook his head. My room? In other words, he didn't have to know he wasn't his body, or he was going to be changing his body. He predicted that would happen for all of us. And so, but it was a heavy statement, but ultimately it was meant that we're not in control of our lives, it just, we go through and the laws of karma are working. Prabhupada was instructing us all across the board in everything he did, every move, every function. There was definitely an educational system set up here. Teaches where we have to be taught on the basic stuff of just how to clean yourself and all that stuff we know about. Okay, now here's the divine moment when he's going to instruct us how to leave the body. Now we all got to go through that, and he said that, of course. There's going to be a time when we all have to go through it. Don't think you're going to be privileged not have to go through it. Okay, so the time is coming Earlier, the Kaviraj was saying your uric acid is killing, is poisonous. So it's building up, and if you don't relieve that, if you don't pass, ultimately you're going to go. And so he said, you're going to leave about 7:30 at night. This was in the morning, about 11:30. So it got to be, we came into the room just before that, and it was like 7:10, just before he left. And then all of the kirtan was roaring, and the whole thing, I mean, it was going up through the roof, you know. And so I looked up above our heads, and I could feel all this energy coming down on us, you know. I mean, Prabhupada talked about, you know, another learning experience, that talking to the four walls or talking to an empty audience doesn't matter, because ultimately Narada Muni shows up a couple times. Then there was one time in LA, the kirtan was uproarious and went right through the roof, and so the sky opened up, and you might have been there for that. It was just like unbelievable. And so then he said later, well, Narada Muni came, Brahma came, and Indra, they all were laughing like anything. I thought, what is this? And we asked, why were they laughing? He said, because of the Yavanas and the Malechas dancing and joining in the kirtan. It's just unbelievable. And so the demigods show up once in a while in Prabhupada's presence. So of all the instructions, I think the top instruction was about leaving his body. I mean, that was really an amazing moment. When he did leave, everything disappeared. All that energy that was in the room just, pow, flash, it's gone. So Prabhupada's mission became his institution. It happened that fast.
Je anilo premadana koruna prachu